Hello, this is Sustenance and Covering, the only YouTube channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. Because living the simple life is fun when you choose it for yourself. But it can be downright deadly when just out of the blue the world chooses a simple life for you and you're not prepared for it. This is going to be the start of a new series about wooden homemade box traps. And we're going to start off with just telling you a few things you need to consider when deciding to make some homemade box traps. As you see here, I've got 3 different box traps. They're all of the same design, but they're all different sizes. The 2 in the foreground are about the same size, but they're not quite the same size because the one in the very front was made with scrap lumber, and I basically shaped it based on what sizes of wood I had on hand, whereas the one in the middle is a standard size that I normally build. The one in the back also is leftover scraps. It's not a size I would normally build, but it'll still do the job. Something you may have noticed different about the front trap and the second trap is that the mesh, the hardware cloth, is a different size. This size has very, very small holes. I'm going to give this trap to my brother-in-law, and all he wants a trap for is to relocate squirrels. So he doesn't have to do anything with them except catch them and then take them somewhere else and let them go. Me, on the other hand, I plan on eating them. This particular size here, these 2 in the front, will catch either a squirrel or a rabbit. And if you've noticed, the hardware cloth that I'm using is actually 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch mesh, and you can actually shoot a .22 rifle in there without damaging it. Just stick it right up to it and pull the trigger, and if the squirrel or rabbit's in the right position, you can kill him before you even take him out of the trap. Of course, when you do that, you need to wash all blood out so that you can reset the trap and hope to get something else. Now, another feature about these 2 traps that's a little different is the fulcrum for the lever. If you notice on this one, I've got a Y fulcrum. It's probably a better design than this one, which is just simply a register that's been cut out of the lever so that it sits flush on top of that flat cut on my fulcrum. Now, the reason that I always make my traps like this is because I don't like just going in the woods to look for a certain type of tree. I just cut down the trees that are too cluttered, or something that I've got too many of, and usually you don't get perfect Ys. With this one, you pretty much got to look for a tree that has a good Y in it, and then what that ends up doing is you end up cutting trees down because they have a Y you need, when in fact you would rather leave the tree there. Now, as far as sizes go, this bigger one would probably be more suitable for a raccoon, medium size to a large raccoon. You can get, I'm not going to tell you what sizes to build your traps, because every animal has a preferred size. But what I will tell you is you can go to Havahart.com. That's Havahart. They sell ready-made traps that are similar. And even though these boxes, the inside dimensions are going to be different than the outside dimensions because we're using 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch thick plywood, the Havahart traps are not like that. Those traps are actually made out of metal. The metal's so thin that basically your outside measurement and inside measurement are the same. So if you go to Havahart, it'll ask you what kind of animal you want to trap. You click on squirrel or raccoon, whatever, and it'll list all the traps that are good for that. So you can go to those traps, and when you get there, it'll tell you the dimensions, and that's how you can figure dimensions for what trap you need. You're more familiar with what animals you have available for trapping than I am. But in any case, if Havahart Trap says it's 6 by 7 by 13, you make your inside dimensions 6 by 7 by 13. That's just an example. Now, there's a bunch of different types of wooden box traps out there that I've seen, and they'll all catch something, but it's just like the screen. You know, you can make a box trap with no window at all. I'm not the kind of person that likes a surprise, and you can take a trap that's designed for a bear and it's closed up, you can't tell what's in there. You open it up, and if a skunk triggered it, that's what's going to come out of there. So if there's a skunk in my trap, I want to know it before I even get close to the trap so I can figure out how to deal with him. Now these traps, the way they work is there's a trigger at one end, and that would be that, and a fulcrum, and that's this one, and a lever going across the top, which connects to the door. When an animal goes in, it will touch your trigger, push it forward, causing it to release, and I'm going to demonstrate that now. But one thing I wanted to point out first is that you want your trigger to be relatively straight, but you don't have to have a straight one. I prefer that if it's bent, the bend goes towards the front of the box. That way the animal is going to have a better chance of causing the trigger to release. And here we go. I'm going to try to do, well, let's see if there's a way I can do this so that you can see it. Oh, I hope you caught that. Oh, anyways, hard to be the cameraman and the actor and the designer and all at the same time. When that trigger releases and it shuts the door, all the gizmos that are in the way are out of the way. They're just laid out here. That looks kind of clumsy and cumbersome, but it isn't. If anything were to stay inside the trap, which some traps are designed so that all the triggering mechanism stays inside, whatever's in there, when he goes crazy and starts running around, he's going to bust all your stuff up. By being all on the outside, it's totally safe. Another thing I like about the design of these traps is all of that comes out and fits into the trap. So you can actually, if you have all your traps the same size, you can stack them. And here's a stack of them that are the same size. All the gizmos are on the inside, the works, and these will stack neatly out of the way. You can even cache them somewhere. Cache, which means go out in the woods, dig you a hole, bury them, and cover them up for later use when people are going crazy trying to find all your stuff. And I'll show you this from the end. See that? And that's a standard size. I cut them, these here are all 24 inches long because you can work your way down a sheet of plywood both sides and use every single scrap of lumber. And I'll do something similar to that for my bigger traps. I want to have about a dozen of these squirrel and rabbit size and maybe a dozen of the raccoon size in the wood traps. And there you go. I can't really think of anything else to recommend on these other than to recommend that you watch the entire series. I'll actually do a video on how to build the box, another video on how to make the parts that are on the outside of the box, the lever, the trigger, and the fulcrum, and another video on how to adjust the height of the door and the height of the trigger. And so with all those videos, you should be able to make a trap and be successful.